Welcome to the Exam Room Live, brought to you by the Physicians Committee. Hi, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll, and this is the healthiest half hour anywhere online today. Appreciate you joining us right here on Facebook and on YouTube. And boy, oh boy, do we have a big show today. Coming up, she was in her 20s, she was overweight, and already on 2 different medications for high blood pressure. So how did this remarkable woman, who is only a whisper above 5 feet, lose more than 60 pounds? Well, Brittany Jaroudi, she is here to share her secrets to her incredible health transformation with us. Brittany, what a remarkable story. I can't wait to hear all about this.
So happy to be here.
And Dr. Neal Barnard also here with us today as we continue our look at the coronavirus. And now a new study is giving us a clearer picture on just how dirty the surfaces are that you touch and how long the coronavirus can survive on them. Dr. Barnard, some really dirty details in this one.
You said it. You're going to wash your hands after watching this episode.
No question about that. And we're going to be opening up the doctor's mailbag. So if there's something on your mind that you would like to ask the good doctor, go ahead and post that in the comment section or the chat box, and we will pick one and answer that by the end of the show. But first, let's get caught up on the latest happenings. Here are your health headlines for Wednesday, October 21st, 2020. And we do begin with a look at the coronavirus pandemic and the continued rise of cases across the country. 60,000 new infections reported Tuesday, while 2/3 of states have seen an increase in the number of hospitalizations over the last week. And over the last 2 weeks, cases overall are up 36%, with the number of deaths now starting to climb as well. Tracking conducted by the New York Times shows a 7% spike during that span. Meanwhile, we're learning more about how long someone with COVID-19 can spread the disease. A review of dozens of studies finds those who have mild or no symptoms can be infectious for no more than 10 days. However, those with severe infections can shed the virus for double that amount of time, 20 days. The review of 77 studies was published in the Journal of Infection Control and Hospital Epidemiology. And finally, in other news, green tea and coffee are being shown to lower the risk of death among people who have diabetes. A study of nearly 5,000 Japanese residents with the disease finds those who drank 4 or more cups of green tea every day had a 40% lower risk of dying from any cause. And those who drank 2 or more cups of coffee experienced a similar benefit. And among those who drank an abundance of both, well, get this, the risk of dying fell by 63%. Benefits were also experienced to a lesser extent by those who didn't drink quite as much. Previous research has shown the bioactive compounds found in both coffee and tea to have positive health benefits. Pretty cool. Before we get to the incredible story of Brittany Jaroudi, let's first turn back to the pandemic and that new study showing exactly how long the virus can survive on common surfaces. And it's probably a lot longer than you would like to think and hope for. To break down the dirty details for us, let's go ahead and welcome Dr. Barnard to the show. And Dr. Barnard, there's a commercial that comes on the TV all the time that asks, "What's in your wallet?" And in this case, I'm betting the answer is coronavirus.
Yeah, it sure could be. I'll tell you, this has been an evolving story, and I'm glad that we could revisit it because we actually have 2 new studies that have given us new information, and it's the picture is getting a little bit creepier. Can you see my screen here?
I can indeed. Okay.
The word fomite, along with words like coronavirus and Zoom. We never thought we'd need these words, but fomite is an object that's likely to carry an infection. So you've got a virus, or you have a bacterium like this. They're microscopic, you don't see them, but they settle on things like chicken packages or door handles or something like that. And then you bring this home and it's in your kitchen, and the fomite is whatever's just holding the virus there. And so the question is, are they dangerous? And right since the very beginning of this, people have taken it very, very seriously. China stopped taking Tyson chicken products from Springdale, Arkansas, because they were infected with the coronavirus. And China wouldn't take salmon from Norway, and they wouldn't take pork from Germany because they were testing suggested that they would carry the coronavirus. So in other words, it wasn't just on a door handle or a cell phone. It seemed to be particularly in meat products. So the meat industry reacted. And they said, no, don't worry about it. This came out in June. They said the virus doesn't survive in food, but also the poultry, when it's shipped, it's refrigerated or it's even frozen. And it's frozen at really cold temperatures, so that's got to wipe out the virus. Well, that's not actually what studies suggested at all. If going back a number of years with other viruses, it was really clear that viruses could live on meat. In fact, they kind of preferred meat. Noroviruses, hepatitis viruses, and others. So researchers started looking specifically at the SARS-CoV-2. That's the virus that causes COVID-19. And I presented this way back when, as soon as the study came out, and it looked, frankly, Chuck, it looked pretty reassuring that on a copper surface, the virus was dead in 4 hours, cardboard, 24 hours, plastic or stainless steel, maybe 3 days, glass, 5 days. Okay, so those surfaces, the virus is not going to survive. However, meat is not sold at room temperature. It's sold refrigerated or it's sold frozen, and that allowed the virus to survive much, much longer. And it looks like at room temperature, or at a frozen temperature or refrigerated temperature here at 4 degrees Celsius, that's around maybe 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The inside of your refrigerator would be like that. The virus is very stable, but if you heat it up, it's gone. So then researchers started looking, well, what actually happens not in a laboratory, but in a market? And so that's when salmon was thought of as being a problem. So researchers took salmon in particular and inoculated it with the virus. And this study came out of a Chinese veterinary medical center, and they showed that the virus lasted well over a week in salmon, which between the time the salmon was caught and the time the salmon ended up in your kitchen, more than enough time for transmission. So it looked like salmon was a fomite, and it still looks that way. But then 2 new studies have come out. One recently published from researchers in Singapore. And what they did now is they took salmon, they took chicken, they took pork, and they tested them in 3 different temperatures. One was 4 degrees Celsius, that's refrigerated. One was -20, one was -80. That's really frozen. And they kept this experiment going for 21 days, and the viability was fine throughout. In other words, you put the virus on meat surfaces, it just lasts as long as it's refrigerated or frozen. It doesn't go away. So the new study, very frightening, came out of Australia. And now they said, just as you mentioned, Chuck, what's in your wallet? Well, what's in your wallet are banknotes. But they also looked at stainless steel, they looked at glass, they looked at vinyl. Why did they look at these things? Your cell phone has a glass surface that you're touching all the time, and you might wash your hands, but then you pick up the phone, which you haven't washed and which you were touching before you washed your hands, or stainless steel of the type, for example, a handle that you might hold somewhere, or vinyl, plastic coverings, very common on the cell phone cover or on handles you might grab. So they then looked not at refrigeration temperatures. They looked at room temperature, 20 degrees Celsius, that's about maybe 70 degrees Fahrenheit, so that's room temperature. And then they looked at hotter temperatures, 30 degrees Celsius, 40 degrees Celsius. That's high, that's getting up over 90 degrees. But here's what they did. They used a larger inoculum. In other words, they used more virus. They used sort of the amount of virus that a person who was sick might cough onto money they held into their hand, or might sneeze onto a phone that they had on their table. And what they found is if you did it with that size virus and you did it in the dark. Why the dark? Because ultraviolet light will kill the virus. But indoors, there's not much ultraviolet light. They found that the virus was fully viable for a good 4 weeks. So all of those initial studies that said, oh, the virus is just going to die at room temperature, probably true. If it's just a little bit of virus, the particles go away. But if it's a big inoculum, a big glob, if you will, from a person who sneezed on it or coughed on it, there's enough that it's going to last for about 4 weeks or more. So what's in your wallet? Probably not so good. This is part of the reason why governments around the world are starting to sequester imported banknotes, and they quarantine them like they quarantine people. So that's the creepy news, Chuck.
Creepy is indeed the word for it. You know, I remember seeing this study. It came out pretty recently, and reading about that. And I had always heard about how dirty money could be, and then it really, I mean, this one just really just kind of hit it home for me. I was honestly surprised at just how long the virus could remain viable on there. We're not just talking about surviving here. I believe the researchers in Australia were looking at how long it was actually going to be viable.
Right.
And then if you touch it and then touch your mouth, there's a good chance that you may become infected.
Yeah, that's right. And that's really the most important thing, because if you take a fomite, and the fomite could be your phone or a door handle or something like that, and if you look at how often does a virus that's planted there actually get picked up by your finger, and then how often does it actually make it from your finger to your face, the rough answer is about a third of the time in each case. So it's a lot. Meaning you touch that elevator button or the keypad on the ATM, about a third of the time you're going to pick up what is there. So good reason for cleanliness. And many of us were wondering if this new study might not have been funded by MasterCard. They wanted people to stop using their credit card instead. I don't know about that, but there's reason for caution. But obviously the biggest take-home message, though, comes back to meat. And not just salmon, but also chicken and other meats, because they are, unlike glass and unlike vinyl, they are always refrigerated or frozen, one or the other, in the process of transport and even in your home, unlike apples or bananas. And so they are the kind of suspect number one when it comes to fomites.
It's such almost an odd thought to think that, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, once this pandemic is under control, somebody could go into their freezer, pull out this frozen salmon that they purchased today, and there would still be virus on it.
Yeah, very, very likely the case. The experiment, as long as the experiments continue, you just don't see the viability dropping at all. So the idea that frozen temperatures would kill it, the opposite is true. Frozen temperatures will preserve it. But the big concern that we have is what happens when you get it home. Let's say a person is still eating chicken despite the salmonella and E. coli and everything else. As it's thawing on your kitchen counter, and you're then using your sponge or your knife, and that's when the fomites really exert themselves. And you may cook the chicken, but you didn't cook your hands or your knife or the other things, and the virus then spreads very easily.
All right. Dr. Barnard, appreciate your wisdom and the dirty details there, but stick around. We're going to be opening up the doctor's mailbag in just a little bit. So if you have a question for Dr. Barnard, post that in the chat section or the comment section now, or the live chat box. We're going to go ahead and pick out a question, get you an answer in just a little bit. But right now, who's ready for a little inspiration? We could all use a little pick-me-up after that. So check this out. When Brittany Jaroudi was just 24 years old, she was already on 2 prescriptions for high blood pressure, and a third for high cholesterol looked like it was coming at any day then. And at just 5 feet tall, she weighed nearly 200 pounds. She got winded just by walking up a hill. And what's worse, she says she was also beginning to experience chest pains at such a tender age. And that Brittany hit a breaking point. In 2016, adopted a plant-based diet, and it was not long before that weight came pouring off, as did her need for that medication. And she became so inspired by her transformation, her improved health, that she began paying it forward, not just to her friends and her family, but now also on YouTube, where she shares her journey and a lot of delicious, healthy, yummy recipes with the world. Let's get the secrets to her success. Brittany Jaroudi, thanks so very much for joining us here on the Exam Room Live.
Thanks so much for having me, Chuck.
As one weight loss success to another, first of all, my hat is off to you. And when I was reading about your story and hearing that you were having those difficulties in your 20s, it reminded me so much of what it was that I went through myself when I was 400 pounds and those chest pains, and just thinking like, I'm way too young to be feeling this way. I'm sure it was the same for you.
Exactly. I had just got married, just started my career, and thought, if this is where I'm at now, who knows what I'm going to be like in 10, 15 years. And I had such a rich family history and heart disease and cancer, and the blood results just showed me I had to do something. So really it was watching Forks Over Knives that changed my life. The next day, I decided to go 100% in on it, and I've been doing it ever since. And it just has changed my life so completely that I kind of joke that I'm a different person than I was 5 years ago.
Oh, there's no question about it. I think that you transform inside and out when you go through something like this. Let's first talk about your previous diet before you watch that documentary and you make this big change. You said that your family has a rich history of these diet-related diseases. So, what was your diet like before the change?
It was pretty much the standard American diet. It was eating things that I thought were okay, like chicken and lean meats, having dairy, trying to get the low fat options, but still having processed foods that were convenient in college and in between that period of becoming an adult and moving out of my parents' house. So it wasn't, I still ate vegetables and fruit and still thought I was doing an okay job. But as the weight started to creep up and just felt awful, I knew that there was something I had to do to change.
Were there little things that you would kind of say to yourself or almost kind of trick yourself to continue down that unhealthy path that you were going because maybe you weren't ready for change? I was super stubborn, so I always love to pick the brains of somebody else who's been through this as well. Like, you know that you could be doing better, you know that you should be doing better, but somehow, some way, you're going to come up with an excuse to keep eating that standard American diet or making that trip through the drive-through.
Definitely. It was that I was busy. I was getting my master's degree. I didn't have time. And then, too, when I originally got my blood test, I Googled how to lower your inflammation in your body because I got a really awful CRP number, and a Mediterranean diet came up. And so I ate a lot of salmon and tried to do things that I thought were healthy, and got a blood test a couple months later and nothing budged. And so really it was just by chance luck that I was on Netflix the day before Easter, during a school break, that I saw that Forks Over Knives documentary. But there was lots of excuses and putting it off, and just really it was that documentary that really opened up my eyes.
Talk to me about the emotions of that day after you tried really hard with that Mediterranean diet. I'm sure maybe you went to the doctor expecting those numbers to improve, but then when they hadn't, how did you feel?
So defeated and so overwhelmed that I just kind of tossed in the towel that it was genetic and that this was an issue that I was going to have to deal with, that I probably could lose obviously some weight being overweight at that height, but that, really my blood pressure and cholesterol and everything was just, needed to be solved by medication.
All right, genetics. This is a big one because then when you watch the documentary, you learn that, as the famous saying in these communities go, genes don't have to be your destiny. So talk about that epiphany and how powerful of a moment that was when you realized that.
So I had my dad has diabetes. He had open heart surgery when I was in elementary school, has a defibrillator, tons of medical issues. My mom battled cancer several times throughout her life. And I had an uncle who passed very young from heart disease, and just saw my family around me suffer so much, that really I thought like I was doomed to repeat this. And like, what life am I going to live already suffering so early? So when I watched the documentary and I saw the change that Forks Over Knives made in those people's lives, and that they had numbers like mine currently, and I was much younger than them, but the success they had with doing this, I thought, oh, this gives me a little bit of control. I actually do have some ability to change my projection of life. And also, after doing this, I got my blood taken, I think 3 months later, and I already started seeing improvements, especially in my blood pressure, that it just made me stick with it even more.
Did you get an opportunity to speak with your doctors about what it was that you were doing as far as adopting the plant-based diet?
I did. I went back to my doctor, got taken off the medication. I kind of explained, they looked at me like I had three heads, that this was kind of impossible. And then shortly after, I switched to a plant-based doctor in my area who kind of understood the lifestyle aspect of it. But it's really amazing because originally when I was in the doctor's office being prescribed two different blood pressure medications, and them discussing me possibly being on cholesterol medication, they gave me, a paper handout with some tips of how to change your lifestyle, including like reducing your salt intake, but nothing was about adopting a whole food plant-based lifestyle. So really it was, and every time after too, when I went to my parents' doctor, I would kind of bring up the aspect of lifestyle after, can it help improve, um, their life, and usually I just got the blank stare of, I don't want to talk about this.
Well, let's talk about maybe the stares that you got that Easter that you spent with your family. You said that you had watched Forks Over Knives the day before, and then you come to dinner the next day and you're all in. But I'm sure that the table was just filled with the typical Easter offerings, including a big old ham. So what kind of stares did you get from your family, and what was their reaction when you had your vegan coming out?
Yeah, I think everyone looked at me like confused and unsure. It was the night before Easter that I watched it and then made the decision that I had to do something and this is what I was going to try. So pretty much I ate before I went to Easter because I didn't really know how to prepare at that point. And even the sides at my Easter family had butter and different things that I obviously was trying to avoid, and oil. So I pretty much ate before and just attended to be social. And then I, read up on all of the science behind it and really educated myself so I could talk about it with family members. And now when I go to family members for different holidays, they actually even have a whole food plant-based same dish, but different for me and my husband to enjoy. So it's really been amazing to see kind of that, even them having an offering like that at the table.
Yeah, well, let's talk about this. So that initial skepticism, that ice cold reaction, that eventually thawed. I know that you said that your husband now is eating that whole food
Mhm.
plant-based diet. So how long did it take to get him to kind of open his mind a little bit and say, you know what, she may be onto something here?
Luckily for me, it wasn't too hard. He already wasn't a big meat eater. He comes from a Syrian background of his father, so he ate a lot of beans already. So it wasn't like I really had to twist him too much. Cheese took a little bit of time, I would say 6 months after. But my philosophy with cooking this way and starting the channel was making the foods that we enjoyed before whole food plant-based and that they can taste just as good now, even better. So I make a lot of the same dishes that we enjoyed prior, just so much healthier now.
And what about other members of your family? Maybe your parents, have they kind of opened their mind up a little bit?
So unfortunately, my mom passed away of stage 4 cancer last year. And before she passed away, she was eating more plant-based and becoming educated on it. My dad has not. He still is battling the same health issues he has. However, my little brother, who is 4 years younger than me, has adopted a whole food plant-based lifestyle because he also had blood pressure issues the same age around when I did. And I kind of gave him all of the information, and him and his wife are kind of doing it. He's in the Air Force right now, so they're not stationed near us, but we always get on Zoom and different things to kind of share recipes. So it's been really awesome to see him take control of his health too.
Brittany, I'm so sorry about your mom, but I'm very thrilled to hear about your brother as well. Now, let's quickly, before we wrap this up, I want to talk to you about your YouTube channel because you are putting up a whole lot of tasty yum yums on there. And before you made this transition, you weren't even much of a chef, were you?
No, I actually was somebody who would just go and buy like the bags of sauce that you would just add to their chicken and you would call it dinner, or like the minute rice. And I've just found so much love for cooking and trying new foods. And my whole philosophy behind starting the YouTube channel was I wanted to make whole food plant-based oil-free recipes that were delicious, healthy, comforting, that you can get your entire family to jump on board with. So even if you're not plant-based or you're just trying to be plant-based, you can still enjoy them and they're delicious. So I just really have found such a passion for sharing this and also a way to give back. I feel like I owe this community so much for giving me my life back pretty much and such a beautiful future, that if I can help somebody enjoy the recipes and enjoy the food and stay on this lifestyle, then I'm all for devoting my time towards that.
Absolutely. And you can check Brittany out on YouTube. Look for the Jaroudi family, also the JaroudiFamily.com. And just because branding is consistent, she's got this down to a science on Instagram. Look for the Jaroudi family as well. And you're actually giving a presentation tonight. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we're going to be with Plant-Based Pittsburgh. It's a Plant Pure pod that I help co-lead with Sally Lipsky. And we are helping do Zoom presentations right now. We've been doing that since the pandemic. And so anyone, anywhere can join us. We're going to have a virtual class tonight. I'm going to be in the kitchen cooking up cancer-fighting meals for breast cancer awareness. And so we're going to be using a lot of foods that are really great to help our bodies prevent cancer. And I'm really excited to be with everyone tonight.
Fantastic. And you're also going to be, you work a lot with Sally Lipsky, correct? Over at the Plant-Based Eating Hub. And I know that Sally's book this month, she's donating the proceeds from that to the Physicians Committee. So what a wonderful cause. And you can check that out at plantbasedeatinghub.com. Now, Brittany, we have to leave it here for today. But what I would love to do is extend an invitation to you to join me back on the Exam Room podcast, our sister show here, where you and I can talk more in depth about your story, because I feel like there are so many people who are watching this right now that can identify with where you were. And they're probably saying to themselves, man, if she can do it, I can do it. I want to hear more about it. So I would love to take some more time with you and really sit down and break it down and go step by step and really try to inspire even more people, if that's something you'd be interested in.
I would love that. If I can do it, you can do it too. It's so possible.
I love that attitude. All right, Brittany Jaroudi, thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Time now to welcome Dr. Barnard back to the show as we enter the home stretch here on the Exam Room Live. And we are going to be opening up the doctor's mailbag. Dr. Barnard, he's ready to answer one of your questions. And today's comes to us from Karen. And we haven't talked much about what it was that Karen wants to know about today. Dr. Barnard, Karen wants to know a little bit more about potassium. She writes, I have heard that potassium can be beneficial for the heart. Is that true? And what are good sources of it?
Great question. You're right. We don't talk about it. Not only is potassium good for the heart, it's essential for the heart. Potassium, like sodium, these are electrolytes, and that word shows kind of what they're doing. They help you to maintain your heart rhythm. They maintain electrical things within your body, including your heartbeat. Where do you find it? It's really in vegetables and fruits. You probably are aware that there's potassium in bananas. You hear people talk about that. But it's also in spinach. It's in broccoli. You'll find it in potatoes and sweet potatoes. You'll also find it in beans like pinto beans and soybeans. So the people who tend to have sort of low potassium diets are the persons who's eating a lot of meat and is a little phobic of their vegetables. And once they bring the vegetables and fruits in, they get plenty of it. A couple other quick points I might make. Potassium and sodium are sort of opposites when it comes to your blood pressure. You know that sodium will raise your blood pressure. Potassium does the opposite. So having these vegetables and fruits in your diet helps not just your heart health, but it also brings your blood pressure down a little bit. But the other thing to note is that your body really does a lot of work to conserve potassium. You're very unlikely to run really low in potassium because your body is going to preserve your heartbeat at all costs. But as long as you've got lots of vegetables and fruits, you'll get plenty of it. The other thing to maybe just say is these foods bring you potassium. Yes, of course they do, but they bring you so much else. They bring you calcium. They bring you iron. They bring you lots of vitamins. They bring you various phytonutrients. So yes, eat your bananas, but don't forget your spinach and broccoli and everything else from the plant kingdom.
There you go. Good advice. Thank you very much. And if we didn't get to your question today, have no fear. We will save it and we will try to get you an answer on an upcoming episode, including on Friday's episode where Dr. Barnard will be joining me here. We're going to do a big end of week Q&A. We're going to be answering all kinds of questions from the doctor's mailbag. So keep on posting those in the comment section or the chat box. You can also tweet them to us using the hashtag ExamRoomLive. Bottom line, just send us in your questions and we will do our very best to get you an answer. Dr. Barnard, my friend, we will talk to you again on Friday. Thanks for taking the time today.
Looking forward to it, Chuck. Thanks.
All right. Now, all month long, we are banding together to beat breast cancer throughout the month of October. And Dr. Barnard and I, we would love for you to join the Physicians Committee in this effort. And all you need to do is head over to letsbeatbreastcancer.org and pledge to take the 4 steps that our experts have designed. Experts like Dr. Christy Funk have designed that can help you lower your risk of developing breast cancer. You see them right there on that screen. Head over to letsbeatbreastcancer.org, pledge to follow those 4 steps. And when you're doing that, you can also enter to win a grand prize pack from some of our great sponsors who have supported the Let's Beat Breast Cancer campaign this year, including our friends at onedaytowellness.org. So thank you very much to them for their support as well. Now head over to letsbeatbreastcancer.org, pledge to follow those 4 steps and lead a healthier life. All right, coming up on the show tomorrow, the one and only Fiber Queen, dietitian Lee Crosby. She will be making a dietitian's house call here on the Exam Room Live, and she's going to be joined by Dr. Vanita Rahman. She's going to be here to help us raise our nutrition IQs. So the fun starts back here at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. So have a lunch and learn or a brunch and book smarts. I don't know what 9 a.m. is. That's in between breakfast and brunch. So anyway, just join us tomorrow right back here on Facebook and YouTube. We would love to see you. That's all the time that we do have for today. I want to say thank you one more time to the incredibly inspirational Brittany Jaroudi and to the crew behind the scenes that makes the magic happen here at the Exam Room Live. And of course, to you who is watching my Exam Roomie, you are the reason why we do this show. On behalf of Dr. Neal Barnard and everyone here at the Physicians Committee, I am the weight loss champion, Chuck Carroll. Thank you so very much for watching. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. And until then, stay safe, take a stand, and keep it plant-based.